This video is going to talk about the different types of fishing line and how to choose the right one for your application. Guys, if you came here from our ice fishing basics video, do me a favor, give us a thumbs up and let us know in the comments below. If you haven't seen that video yet, we're going to put a link up here in this little card. Go over and check that thing out. Before we get started, guys, if you like the video, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Every single subscription we get helps us grow the channel. We're going to be making a whole bunch of these basics type videos for both open water and ice fishing. Okay, so today we are talking ice fishing line. When you go to the store and you go to the line, it is going to be slightly overwhelming. There are boxes with different numbers and different weights and different words, and they all look a little different, but a lot of them also look the same. It gets really confusing and really difficult to figure out what you need for whichever situation. So today we're going to talk about the three most common types of fishing line and just how to choose what's best for you. But first, I'm going to talk to you about how to read the box and see what's on these. So one thing you'll notice in most of these is there's going to be a little number on the bottom, and that's the weight. Okay, and so what that means is this is rated for about 4 pounds of static pull. And so what you can do is you can change the drag on your rod in order to make it so it pulls out before you get 4 pounds of tension and you break the line. Okay, the other thing you'll see is up here it says 110 yards. And then it'll also say on the bottom the diameter. And so this one says it is 0.007 of an inch diameter. This here says 0.008 in diameter. And this one doesn't say what the diameter is on there, but this one says it has an equivalent to 1 pound. And so just remember, these ones here said 4 pounds. This one here says 1 pound. When you get these things, you're going to be able to choose anywhere from, I think, 2 or 3 pounds all the way up to 15, 20. You can get into 80 and 90 pound tests when you get into certain braids for certain fishing applications. I'm fairly certain that our musky fishing rods are strung up with 65 pound tests, I believe it is. And so that's what those little numbers mean down there. The first line we're going to talk about is something called monofilament. Monofilament is the most common line you see on people's reels because it's very economic. It's by far the most popular and the most widely used fishing line. It pretty much fits most situations, and it's got a lot of pros. Most of the pros are it's economical, okay, it's not expensive. It disappears pretty well when it goes underwater. It can basically tie just about any fishing knot on there and not have to worry about it. It's pretty abrasion resistant. A thing about monofilament that's kind of cool is that it actually floats, which has its own usage when it comes to open water fishing. Like maybe you're running a top water or you're running something on, say, a bottom bouncer, which means that you're trying to get it as low to the ground or low to the bottom as possible with a weight, but you also want that lure to work its way up and not dig down. That's where a floating line can come in handy. It also has something that can be seen as either a pro or a con, depending. Monofilament has a significant amount of stretch. So if you're using it in a bait feeding type situation where you have a piece of meat and a fish comes up and grabs it and you want that fish to be able to swim away without feeling it, some stretch is pretty good. It actually helps keep a fish pinned, which means it keeps the hook in there if you have a stiffer rod. But in certain situations, you might not want it to stretch. So that's kind of a situation by situation thing. One final piece of information that is more for open water season than ice fishing season, but monofilament breaks down in the sun. So UV rays make monofilament brittle. Okay, next we have fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is all but invisible. It hits the water and it's gone. That's why this is so darn popular. It gets used for leaders, which means the last little bit of line before the lure, just because it's pretty much not there to the fish, which is awesome. This is more stiff than monofilament. So where monofilament has a stretch and it might be more of a straight line. When you get up into higher weights of fluorocarbon, sometimes you see some of that coiling I was talking about, or where the line is more stiff and rigid. But that's just part of the next thing, which is it has significantly high abrasion resistance. So if you hit a rock, you hit a tree, you do whatever it is, and your line rubs across that, it's not going to get little nicks in there that'll cause you to break off the next time that you set the hook. You can also tie just about any knot you want with this fluorocarbon. Now, the two main differences, I guess, that we want to talk about is stretchy for monofilament, not stretchy for fluorocarbon, floats for monofilament, sinks for fluorocarbon. And one thing I didn't talk about before, monofilament actually absorbs some water as you're using it, and it changes kind of how the line works over time. Fluorocarbon does not absorb any water, so it's going to act exactly the same when you start fishing versus when the day goes on. One thing that could be seen as a con, though, is fluorocarbon is about 50% more than monofilament when it comes to price. Okay, now we're going to talk about braid. Braid is much different than the other ones we just talked about. Braid does not disappear in the water. It has high visibility, which is awesome if you need to see your line. It's not awesome if you're trying to hide it from the fish. Braid is also extremely abrasion resistant and extremely tough. It is very difficult to break the braid. I mentioned before that these two lines had a specific diameter that correlated with that 4-pound test. This is a 5-pound test line, but it has the same diameter as a 1-pound test fluorocarbon or monofilament. What that allows you to do is put a lot more line on your reel. It allows you to feel things much better because the line is so fine and there's no stretch to it. You can feel everything that's happening with your lure. It allows you to get a really good hook set if you want what happens in your hand to happen at the jig. One thing to take into consideration when you're in open water, braid actually floats just like monofilament does. One thing about braid that is kind of a con is that you can't just use any old knot. We like to use either a Palomar or a uni knot. I'll show you how to do those two knots in a different video over here. The last thing that you can see as a con for braid is that it's pretty expensive. You're looking at probably another 50% on top of the fluorocarbon. So it goes monofilament, fluorocarbon, braid. And all I have here, this is an open water line. This is open water braid. And why I wanted to show you this is when you're looking in that store and maybe you're fishing in a place that has open water fishing and ice fishing happening at the same time, you're going to see ice fishing line is in the smaller box. The reason it's important to use ice fishing line instead of just regular fishing line is that there's something about the construction of the outside of the line that's supposed to help shed water a little better and then shed ice so it doesn't build up. I don't know much about that, but they say it does it, so I buy ice fishing line. So to wrap this video up, I want to talk about a couple applications of these, what we use them for. Monofilament. I use monofilament for majority of my dead stick rods or my live bait rods. Anything where I've got a minnow swimming around or I want that fish to be able to eat a bit before feeling that rod, I'm using monofilament. Another thing I use it for is for jigging perch. If I've got a small tungsten that I'm trying to get down there and I've got a really low diameter, really low pound test line, monofilament just seems to be pretty dang awesome. It gives you a lot of play, and with that little extra stretch, it seems to do a good job of catching perch. Okay, fluorocarbon. I use fluorocarbon for leaders, a lot of leaders. So if I'm fishing with a buckshot spoon or some sort of a jig or spoon for walleyes, and I know we have a better chance of dealing with some teeth, what I do is I run a main line of monofilament, probably 5 or so pounds, and then I tie in a leader. And I'll show you how to tie in a line to a line knot right up here. The reason why is because walleye have big old teeth, and I want to make sure that if those teeth are hitting the line at all, I have a better chance of having abrasion resistance. Another thing is the fluorocarbon sinks, and so I don't want the line affecting the way that the fishing lure is moving, and so I don't necessarily want the float of the monofilament. And it's practically invisible in the water, so it really gives the fish a chance to look at the lure and not worry about the line. And last, we'll talk about what we're using the braid for. Braid goes on my main walleye rods. 100% of the time. I want that braid on there because when I'm jigging deep, I want to be able to feel what's happening down at the lure. And with the zero stretch in the braid, it's very sensitive and you can feel everything that's going on down there. And with the very low diameter, it gets the lure down there fast. There's not as much resistance. Another thing that we use the braid for is if I'm pike fishing. Braid just doesn't break. It's really difficult to get braid to break. And so if anytime I have a chance that we're fishing some pike or we got big toothy critters, I'm going to run the line all the way down to whatever I'm using to fish for those pike. And I'm going to run it to this braid here. Guys, I hope you liked that video. I hope you got something from it. If you did, please let me know in the comments below. If there's something that I didn't cover that you'd like me to cover in a different video, please let me know that as well. One more time, if you liked the video, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and check back in for more of these ice fishing basics videos. Guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, keep living your North Prairie life.